What if instead of owning one big house together, we can own two properties? That's four, two properties. I will beat into you guys' head multiple times on this channel that your first home does not have to be your forever home. If you do this correctly, this could be the starting point to building generational wealth. Don't buy a house with your spouse. Did I rage bait you? Gotcha. But no, seriously, what if not buying a house with your spouse is more beneficial than you think? Everybody tells married couples that they should buy their first house together. But what if I told you that buying separately will actually help you build more wealth? Before you think I'm telling people to hide their assets from their spouse and I'm trying to divide their marriage and put all this divisiveness and negativity into your marriage, cut the crap, I'm not. And I'm going to explain a strategy that nobody has ever told you. Typically, people buy homes with their significant others or their spouses because with the combined income, maybe income is higher, they can qualify more. And overall, most married couples buy because that's a traditional route. When you buy together, you can usually combine both incomes. If one spouse makes $60,000 and the other one makes $70,000, you buy $130,000. I get it. That can help you qualify for a higher purchase price. And it can also make the monthly payment feel more manageable because both people are contributing. Another reason why couples buy homes together is because it feels more better emotionally. They feel more complete and stable because they're buying a home with their significant other. You're married, you're building a life together. So naturally, people feel like the home should be in both names. And for some couples, that's the right decision. It can be awesome if both people have great credit, manageable debt, stable income, and they want to be legally tied to that property. But here's the problem. Buying together is not the best wealth building strategy. Sometimes couples are so focused on qualifying for the biggest house when they're not focusing on the bigger picture. They don't ask the questions like, well, what if you buy a smaller property first? Or what if we use one spouse's eligibility now and save the other spouse's eligibility for later? What if instead of owning one big house together, we can own two properties? That's four, two properties. And that's where this strategy comes in. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of why this strategy works great together. Let's say we have this married couple. Let's call them husband and wife. Instead of them buying their first home together, let's say wife buys the first property in her name only. But that doesn't mean that the husband doesn't contribute to wife's home. She uses her own income, her own credit, and her own loan eligibility. If she qualifies for a first-time homebuyer or down payment assistance, she may be able to use that benefit depending on the program's rules. So then her and husband live in that home together as their primary residence and follow all the occupancy requirements. Then a few years later, husband purchases his property in his name so that now husband can qualify for his own down payment assistance and first-time homebuyer program. Now, instead of one household owning one property, they may have a path of owning two. The first property can potentially become a rental, which helps diversify your real estate portfolio. But this will also depend on if it follows the occupancy requirements and you follow the loan or down payment assistance program's rules. So now you rented out first home and the second home is now your primary residence. And then a couple years later, a wife can buy another property because in certain states, if you haven't purchased a home in a couple of years, you can be considered a first-time home buyer. Wife does that and then wait a couple more years again, and then husband can do it again. And y'all are building up a real estate empire that creates legacy for y'all and your children and your children's children. But I do want to make it clear, you cannot assume that just because one spouse qualifies for the program is going to always mean that the husband can qualify as well. Because some programs look at things like your marital status, household income, and even some even look to see if the spouse even has ownership interest, and also tax return. And then even some require both spouses to be on the loan. But also, a lot of the times, it don't really require that as well. There's always that anomaly. But the main point of this is married couples should automatically assume that buying together is the only option. One of the biggest benefits of buying separately is that you may preserve buying power for the future. When both spouses buy a home together, both names are tied to the mortgage. That can impact your debt to income ratio later on, especially if they want to buy another property. But if one qualifies at a time, the other spouse may still have flexibility later, depending on the full financial picture. For example, if the wife buys the first home and the mortgage is in her name, the husband may have an easier time to qualify in the future compared to if they had a home tied together. Like I said, lenders might still look into those things like household obligations, depending on the loan type, and state laws. So again, this is something that you have to confirm with your lender. But from a planning perspective, this is so worth having the conversation early. You're not just thinking about the first purchase. You're thinking about the second purchase and the third purchase and so on. A lot of first-time buyers don't understand or don't realize that certain programs define first-time buyer differently. Like I previously stated earlier, some programs say that you're a first-time home buyer if you have not owned a home in the last 3 years. Some of them may have income limits, some may require you to be on title, some may require your spouse's ownership, even if your name was never on the property. So this is not something that you want to guess on. But in certain situations, buying separately may help a couple use more available programs more strategically. Maybe one spouse qualifies for a Maryland down payment assistance program today. Then later, the other spouse may qualify for a different program depending on the rules at the time. That could help reduce out-of-pocket costs and can also help them get into the market sooner. It can help them create more flexibility instead of putting all their resources into one home. But let me say this again, this is very important. Please do not try to finesse the system. Don't misrepresent your marital status. Do not hide ownership. Do not lie on that application. The goal is to understand the rules and use the programs correctly. And here's benefit number 3. You can build wealth through multiple properties. And this is where the strategy gets powerful. A lot of people buy their first home and think this is a finish line. It's not. Your first home can only be the beginning of your real estate portfolio. Let's say one spouse may buy a townhome first. They live in it for a few years. During that property, the property may appreciate, which means it can increase in value. They may also pay down a mortgage, which helps you build equity. Now they have options. They could rent out the first property. They could keep it as a long-term investment. They could use the equity later so that it can help them buy another property. They could create monthly rental income. This is how real estate can become more than just a place to live. It's now an asset. Now, of course, being a landlord comes with responsibility. I'm a landlord. I know. You have to think about maintenance, repairs, vacancies, property management, but to much is given, much is required. Great purpose requires great responsibility. If you do this correctly, this could be the starting point to building generational wealth. And let's move on to benefit number 4. You do not have to max out your budget. Another reason why I like this conversation is because it plays into and challenges the idea that couples should always buy the most expensive house that they qualify for. Just because your lender says that you qualify for $600,000 doesn't mean that you want to pay that $600,000 payment, and it might not be the smartest move. Sometimes buying smarter and more affordable first gives you breathing room. It allows you to save. It allows you to invest. It allows you to keep your money for repairs and emergencies. And it may allow you to buy again sooner. Because it's better to have multiple properties within a lower budget than trying to max your budget out by buying the most expensive property that you qualify for. And that's how a lot of people become house poor, because they stress themselves too thin too early. I will beat into you guys' head multiple times again and on this channel that your first home does not have to be your forever home. It's literally just a strategy so that you can build your real estate portfolio and think long term. It literally just gets you into the game. And here are the downsides and risks. Let's be fair. Buying separately is not perfect and it doesn't work for everybody. This is for the couples who are able to afford it and make good enough money separately so that they can be able to do it. Because in some instances, one couple may qualify on their own because maybe one spouse may not be able to qualify on their own. They might not have enough income, might not have the best credit. Debt to income ratio can maybe be too high. And those are the cases when they might need their spouse's income to qualify for more. In that case, buying together makes sense. Also, another downside may be the program's rules. Some first-time homebuyer programs look into the whole household, not just the person applying. Kind of similar to renting. I know certain landlords that want to get applications from the entire household instead of the one person that's going to rent and pay the bills. So even if the spouse is on one loan, the program may still qualify the other spouse's income, assets, or credit, or ownership history. That could affect your eligibility. The third downside is legal ownership. There's a difference between being on the mortgage and being on title. The mortgage is who is financially responsible for paying back the loan. Title is who legally owns the property. A spouse could be on title but not on the mortgage, and vice versa. But this is where you need your legal guidance because marriage, ownership, divorce, inheritance, and state law can make this more complicated. The fourth downside could be relationship risk. You and your spouse have to be on the same page when you're doing this. Buying separately does not mean to operate separately. You are still a team, you're still on one accord. You still need transparency and a plan. You need to discuss and lay out with your spouse who pays what, who owns what happens if you move, what happens if you rent it out, and what happens if life changes. This strategy can only happen when there's communication and trust. Who should consider the strategy, you may ask? So this may be worth considering if you're a couple that wants to build your real estate portfolio and thinking generationally. There's 4 ways where it may be worth considering. If your spouse can qualify on their own, if you're not in a rush to buy your forever home, if you're open to living in your starter home first, and if you want to use real estate as a long-term wealth building tool. But this won't be the strategy for you if you need both incomes to qualify. And if one spouse has a lot of debt. And if you're trying to buy your forever home right now. And most importantly, if you and your spouse are not aligned financially or even emotionally, this might not be for you. Because buying is just not a real estate decision. It's a marriage decision, financial decision, legal decision, and long-term planning decision. So before you and your spouse decide to buy your house together or separately, ask each other these questions. Can one of us qualify on our own? Do we both have strong credit? Do either of us have too much debt? Are we trying to buy a forever home or a starter home? Are there down payment assistance programs we may qualify for? Does the program consider household income or only borrower income? Will my spouse's ownership affect my eligibility later? How long do we have to live in this property? What happens if we rent it out later? Whose name will be on the mortgage? Whose name will be on title? How will we handle repairs, expense, and ownership? These are the conversations that people need to have before house hunting. Because once you're under contract, it's harder to create a strategy. The best time to plan is before you apply. So should married couples apply together or separately? The answer is, it just depends. Me personally, I think that it's such a great long-term decision to be able to do this so that both you guys as a unit can create more generational wealth. Overall, like I said before, buying together may be a smart move if you need both incomes and both of y'all have strong credit and want to own a home jointly from the beginning. Like I said, it depends on your preference. But buying separately may be worth exploring if your goal is to build a real estate portfolio, preserve buying power, and potentially use homebuyer programs strategically. The biggest mistake is not even asking any questions at all or even trying to inquire. Don't just buy a house because you see everybody else is doing it. Buy with a plan, because the goal is not to become a homeowner. The goal is to build wealth, create options, and make decisions that benefit your family long term. So if you're in Maryland or DC or Virginia, you're trying to figure out the smartest way to buy your first home, whether that's together or separately or through a down payment assistance program, I love to help you create a strategy. You can schedule a buyer consultation with me using the link in the description box. And if this video helped you think about home ownership differently, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, because I post real estate tips for first-time home buyers, real estate investors, and people who just genuinely want to build wealth through real estate. Bye guys, see you guys in the next video.